If you try to sell that necklace, you will not survive the night. The voice came from behind her, low and calm, yet it cut through the noise of the pawn shop like a blade through glass. Emily Carter froze with the old necklace still resting in her trembling palm. The fluorescent lights above flickered once, then steadied, but something in the air had changed. It felt colder, heavier. The shop owner had been talking just a second ago, rambling about how the piece looked worthless, how he could maybe give her a few dollars out of pity, but now he was silent. Everyone was silent. Emily slowly turned. The man standing in the doorway did not belong here. His suit was too perfect, his posture too still, and his eyes, a pale shade that seemed almost silver, were fixed entirely on her. Not on the necklace. On her. Her heart began to pound so loudly she was sure the whole room could hear it. She swallowed hard, trying to steady her voice, but no words came out. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you cannot miss. Emily had only come here out of desperation. The rent was overdue. The electricity had been shut off that morning. Her mother was lying in a hospital bed across town, and the bill was growing every hour. The necklace was the only thing she had left, a faded piece of jewelry her grandmother had given her before she passed away. It was not even pretty. The chain was thin, slightly tarnished, and the pendant held a dark stone that seemed to swallow light instead of reflecting it. She had always thought it was just an old family keepsake. Something sentimental, not valuable. But the moment the shop owner touched it, he flinched as if burned, pulling his hand back with a sharp curse. Emily had laughed nervously then, thinking it was static or imagination. Now, standing there with that man watching her, she was no longer so sure. He took a single step forward. The sound of his shoe against the floor echoed unnaturally loud. No one else moved. No one else even breathed. Emily felt it then, a strange pressure pressing against her chest, like the air itself was warning her not to move, not to run, not to speak. The man's gaze dropped briefly to the necklace, and for a fraction of a second, something flickered in his expression. Not anger, not surprise, something deeper, something ancient. Then his eyes returned to hers, and the weight of that stare pinned her in place. Emily's fingers tightened instinctively around the necklace, as if protecting it without understanding why. She had never seen this man before. She was sure of that. And yet, standing there under his gaze, a chilling thought crept into her mind. It felt like he had been looking for her for a very long time. Emily did not move, even when every instinct in her body screamed at her to run. The man stepped closer, and with each step, the temperature seemed to drop further, as if the warmth was being pulled out of the room itself. The shop owner shifted behind the counter, his face pale, his earlier confidence completely gone. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but no sound came out. Emily forced herself to breathe, shallow and uneven, her fingers still wrapped tightly around the necklace. "I'm not selling it anymore," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper, but steady enough to surprise even herself. The man stopped exactly 3 feet away from her. Up close, he was even more unsettling. His features were too precise, too perfect, like something carved rather than born. His eyes held hers without blinking, and for a moment, the entire world seemed to narrow down to that single point of contact. "You were never meant to sell it," he said quietly. His voice carried no anger, no threat, and yet it felt heavier than a shout. Emily swallowed hard. "It is mine," she said, tightening her grip again, a flicker of defiance breaking through her fear. Something shifted in his expression then. Not irritation, not disbelief, something closer to recognition. "No," he replied, just as softly. "It was entrusted to you." The words made no sense, and yet they landed somewhere deep in her chest, stirring a strange unease she could not explain. Behind her, the shop owner finally found his voice. "Look, man, if you want the necklace, we can make a deal," he said quickly, forcing a nervous laugh. "I have not even paid her yet. We could just settle this like normal people." The man did not even. "Look at him. Leave," he said. It was not loud. It was not aggressive, but it was absolute. The shop owner froze for a fraction of a second, then nodded rapidly, backing away as if he had just been given permission to escape something far worse than losing a sale. Within seconds, he disappeared into the back room, the door closing with a soft click that sounded far too final. Emily's pulse quickened. Now it was just the two of them. "Who are you?" she asked, the question slipping out before she could stop herself. The man studied her for a long moment, as if weighing something unseen. Then, slowly he extended his hand. Not toward her, but toward the necklace. "May I?" he asked. The politeness of the gesture only made it more unnerving. Emily hesitated. Every instinct told her not to let go, but another feeling, quieter and more persistent, urged her to trust him. She loosened her grip just enough for him to touch the pendant. The moment his fingers brushed the dark stone, the air cracked with a sharp, invisible tension. A faint glow spread beneath the surface of the necklace, deep crimson, like embers buried under ash. Emily gasped, instinctively pulling back, but the chain did not move. It tightened instead, sliding from her hand and rising on its own, as if guided by something unseen. Before she could react, it fastened itself around her neck with a soft metallic click. Heat spread across her skin, not burning, but alive, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. Emily's breath caught as a strange sensation flooded through her, images flickering at the edges of her mind. A grand hall lit by candles, a throne carved from black stone, a woman standing beside it, her face hidden, but her presence unmistakable. Power, grace, something ancient. The vision vanished as quickly as it came, leaving her swaying slightly on her feet. The man stepped forward instantly, his hand hovering near her arm, but not touching. "Do not be afraid," he said, his voice softer now, almost careful. Emily looked up at him, her heart racing, confusion and fear colliding inside her chest. "What is happening to me?" she whispered. For the first time since he entered the shop, the man's composure faltered. Just for a second, but it was enough for her to see it. Hope, and something dangerously close to fear. "You are remembering," he said. His gaze dropped briefly to the necklace resting against her collarbone, the crimson glow fading into a faint, steady pulse. When his eyes returned to hers, they seemed darker, heavier with meaning. "And that," he continued quietly, "means everything has already begun." The silence inside the pawn shop did not return to normal after his words. It deepened. It settled into the walls like something alive. Emily could still feel the faint pulse of the necklace against her skin, slow and steady, like a second heartbeat that did not belong to her. She took a step back, then another, her shoulders brushing against the glass display case behind her. "No," she said, shaking her head, trying to ground herself in something real. "No, this is not possible. I do not remember anything. I have never seen you before." The man watched her carefully, his gaze no longer cold, but searching. "Your mind does not remember," he said, "but your blood does." The words sent a chill down her spine. Emily's hand rose instinctively to the necklace, her fingers hovering just above the dark stone. It was warm now. Not just warm. Alive. "Stop saying things like that," she whispered, her voice breaking slightly. "You are talking like I am someone else." A flicker of something passed through his eyes again, sharper this time. "Pain. You are," he said. The certainty in his voice hit harder than anything else. Emily's breath caught. "Who are you?" she demanded again, louder now, her fear shifting into frustration. "And how do you know all this?" For a moment, he did not answer. The air between them seemed to tighten, as if even the space itself was waiting. Then he straightened slightly, his presence shifting in a way that was impossible to ignore. It was not just authority. It was something older, something absolute. "My name is Lucien Voss," he said. The name meant nothing to her, but the way he said it made her feel like it should. "And you," he continued, his eyes never leaving hers, "have been missing for 300 years. Emily stared at him, the words refusing to make sense. "That is insane," she said immediately. "I am 24 years old. I was born in Ohio. I have a social security number. I have school records. I have a life." Her voice rose with each word, as if volume alone could make reality snapped back into place. Lucien did not react to her outburst. "A constructed life," he said quietly. "A necessary one." Emily shook her head harder now, panic creeping in at the edges of her thoughts. "No, no, you do not get to say that. You do not get to rewrite my life because of some necklace." She reached for the clasp, trying to pull it off, but the moment her fingers touched it, a sharp pulse of heat shot through her skin, not painful, but firm, unyielding. She gasped and pulled her hand back. Lucien's expression darkened slightly. "It will not come off," he said. "Not now." "Why?" she demanded, her voice trembling again. He hesitated. For the first time, there was uncertainty in his posture. "Because it has recognized you," he said finally. "And once it does that, it will not release its queen." The word hung in the air between them, heavy and impossible. Emily felt her stomach drop. "I am not a queen," she said, more quietly now, as if saying it softer might make it more true. Lucien stepped closer again, but slower this time, giving her space to move if she wanted to. She did not. She could not. "You were," he said, "and if the bond has awakened—" He stopped, his gaze dropping briefly to the necklace before returning to her face. "Then you are becoming her again." Emily's thoughts spun, pieces of memory that were not hers brushing against the edges of her mind. Flickers of stone walls, echoing halls, a voice calling a name she could not quite hear. She pressed her hands to her temples, trying to force it all away. "Stop," she whispered. "Just stop." Lucien's jaw tightened slightly, but he did not move closer. "You deserve the truth," he said, "even if you do not want it." Before Emily could respond, a sharp sound broke through the silence. A knock, not on the front door, from outside the building. Heavy, deliberate. Lucien's entire demeanor shifted instantly. The air dropped another degree, colder than before. His eyes flicked toward the door, then back to Emily. "We do not have much time," he said. Emily's heart skipped. Time for what? He did not answer right away. Instead, he took one step closer, his voice lowering. "For them to realize. You have awakened." The second knock came harder this time, followed by the faint sound of something metal scraping against the door. Emily's breath caught. "Who is that?" she asked. Lucien's expression turned into something far more dangerous than before. Not cold, not distant, protective. "Enemies," he said simply. Then, after a brief pause, his voice dropped even further. "And if they take you before I do, there will be no world left where you are safe." The third knock did not sound like a hand anymore. It sounded heavier, harder, like something solid striking the door with controlled force. The metal frame groaned in protest, a low, strained noise that sent a sharp chill through Emily's chest. She flinched instinctively, her back pressing further against the glass case, as if she could disappear into it. "They are going to break in," she whispered, her voice barely holding together. Lucien did not look at the door again. His attention remained fixed on her, intense and unwavering, as if the threat outside mattered less than the decision she had yet to make. "Yes," he said calmly. The simplicity of his answer made her stomach drop. "Then do something," Emily said, panic rising now, pushing her words out faster. "Call the police or something. I do not know. Just do not stand there." A faint shadow of something almost amused crossed his face, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "The police cannot help you," he replied. "They cannot even see what is coming." Another impact slammed into the door, louder this time. The glass panels rattled, a thin crack forming along one edge. Emily's breath caught. Her mind raced, searching for something normal, something logical, but nothing about this was normal anymore. "What do they want?" she asked, her voice shaking. Lucien finally turned his head slightly toward the door, his eyes narrowing just a fraction. "You," he said. The word landed like a weight in her chest. Emily shook her head immediately. "No, that does not make any sense. I am nobody." "You were never nobody," Lucien said, his tone firm now, leaving no room for argument. "You were hidden." The next strike hit with a sharp crack. The door frame bent inward slightly, the lock splintering under force. Dust drifted down from the ceiling in fine, pale lines. Emily's heart pounded harder, each beat echoing in her ears. "I'm not going with you," she said suddenly, the words spilling out before she could stop them. Lucien looked back at her, something darker settling behind his gaze. "If you stay here," he said slowly, "they will take you." "And if I go with you," she shot back, fear sharpening into defiance again, "what happens then?" For a moment, he did not answer. The silence stretched, heavy and deliberate, until even the sound from the door seemed distant. "Then you live," he said finally. Emily stared at him, searching his face for any sign of deception, but there was none. Only certainty, and something else, something that felt dangerously close to promise. Another crack split through the door, with splintering inward as a thin line of darkness appeared between the frame and the wall. Cold air seeped through, sharper than before, carrying with it a faint metallic scent that made Emily's stomach twist. Lucien's posture shifted subtly, his body angling just slightly in front of her, without fully blocking her view. Protective. The realization hit her before she could stop it. "Who are they?" she asked again, softer now. Lucien's gaze hardened. "Hunters," he said. "Not human. Not anymore." The words sent a wave of dread through her. Emily's fingers curled instinctively around the edge of the glass case behind her, grounding herself against the rising panic. "I cannot just leave," she said, her voice breaking. "My mother is in the hospital. I cannot disappear." For the first time, Lucien's expression shifted in a way that caught her off guard. Not cold, not distant, something quieter. "Your mother will be protected," he said. Emily shook her head immediately. "You cannot promise that." His eyes held hers, unblinking. "I can," he said. Another impact struck the door, and this time it gave way. The wood split open with a violent crack, a jagged opening tearing through the center. Through it, Emily saw movement. Dark shapes. Too still. Too deliberate. Her breath caught in her throat. Lucien stepped forward fully now, placing himself between her and the door without hesitation. The air around him seemed to shift, tightening, growing heavier, as if the space itself recognized him as something it needed to obey. "Stay behind me," he said quietly. It was not a command. It was instinct. Emily did not argue. She could not. Her legs moved on their own, stepping closer to him, drawn by the only thing in the room that felt solid against the chaos closing in. The broken door creaked as it was pushed wider from the outside. A figure stepped into the opening, tall and unmoving, its eyes reflecting the dim light in a way that did not look human at all. Then another shape appeared behind it, and another. Emily's breath came faster, her chest tightening as the reality of it all finally settled in. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not a mistake. Whatever the necklace had done, whatever it had awakened, it had just brought something far worse to her door. Lucien's voice dropped lower, colder, as he faced the figures without flinching. "You are too late," he said. And for the first time since this began, Emily realized something that terrified her even more than the creatures outside. He was not afraid of them at all. The figure that stepped through the broken doorway did not rush forward. It did not hesitate either. It simply entered, slow and deliberate, as if it had all the time in the world. The dim light from the flickering ceiling cast long shadows across its face, revealing eyes that gleamed with a dull, unnatural shine. Not silver like Lucien's. Not alive. Something colder. Something empty. Emily's breath hitched as two more figures followed behind it, their movements perfectly synchronized, their presence filling the small pawn shop with a suffocating weight. The air shifted again, thicker now, carrying that same faint metallic scent that made her stomach twist. Lucien did not move from where he stood in front of her. His posture remained calm, almost relaxed, but something beneath that stillness had changed. The quiet around him was no longer passive. It was controlled. "You were warned," Lucien said, his voice low, steady, and unmistakably dangerous. The lead figure tilted its head slightly, as if studying him. When it spoke, its voice sounded wrong, like several tones layered together without harmony. "And yet, you are still here," it replied. Emily felt her pulse spike. She did not understand what they were, but she understood one thing clearly. They were not human. Not anymore. Her fingers curled tighter against her sides, her body instinctively leaning closer to Lucian without realizing it. The necklace against her skin pulsed again, stronger this time, sending a ripple of heat. Across her collarbone, the lead figure's gaze snapped toward her instantly. The reaction was immediate and unmistakable. Recognition. Hunger. There, it said, its voice sharpening. The mark has awakened. Emily's stomach dropped. Lucian stepped slightly to the side, fully blocking their view of her now. You will not take her, he said. The words were not loud, but they carried a force that seemed to press outward, making the air itself tighten. One of the figures behind the leader moved forward, its posture shifting into something predatory. You cannot stop what has already been set in motion, it said. Lucian's eyes darkened, a faint crimson flicker beginning to burn beneath the pale surface. Watch me, he replied. The temperature in the room dropped sharply. Emily gasped softly as a cold wave swept through her, but Lucian did not seem affected at all. If anything, he seemed to grow more solid, more present, like something ancient waking fully for the first time. The lead figure lifted its hand slightly, and for a brief moment, the shadows along the walls seemed to stretch toward it, responding to its movement. Emily's heart pounded harder. This was wrong. All of it was wrong. The necklace pulsed again, brighter now, and this time the sensation did not stop at her skin. It moved deeper, spreading through her chest, her arms, her very breath. Her vision blurred for a fraction of a second, and suddenly she was not in the pawn shop anymore. Stone floors beneath her feet, tall pillars rising into darkness. The echo of distant voices calling out in a language she did not understand, but somehow felt. A presence beside her. Strong. Familiar. Then it was gone. Emily stumbled slightly, her hand instinctively reaching forward until it brushed against Lucian's arm. The contact grounded her instantly, pulling her back into the present. Lucian's reaction was immediate. His head turned slightly, his eyes flicking to where her hand touched him, and for the briefest moment, something flashed across his face. Relief. It vanished just as quickly as it came, replaced again by that cold, controlled focus. Stay with me, he said quietly, just loud enough for her to hear. Emily swallowed hard, nodding even though she was not sure she understood what that meant anymore. The lead figure took another step forward, its gaze fixed on the faint glow of the necklace beneath Lucian's. Shadow. She does not belong to you, it said. Lucian's expression hardened, something final settling into his posture. She never belonged to you, he replied. The words carried weight. History. Something far older than Emily could grasp. The figures paused, just for a second, as if measuring that statement. Then the leader's voice shifted again, lower this time, almost amused. Then let us see if she still remembers how to choose. Emily's breath caught. Before she could ask what that meant, the air inside the shop twisted sharply, like pressure building before a storm breaks. The shadows along the floor surged forward, faster than her eyes could follow, reaching past Lucian, slipping around him, and racing toward her. Lucian moved instantly, faster than anything she had ever seen. One moment he was standing in front of her. The next, he was between her and the shadows, his arm raised, his presence colliding with whatever force was trying to reach her. The impact was silent, but the effect was not. The entire room seemed to shudder, the glass cases rattling violently, a sharp crack splitting through one of them as the pressure rippled outward. Emily staggered back, her breath coming fast, her heart racing uncontrollably. The necklace burned brighter now, the crimson glow reflecting faintly against the broken glass around her. And in that reflection, just for a split second, she saw something that was not her own face. A woman, crowned, watching, waiting. The impact between Lucian and the rushing shadows did not make a sound, but Emily felt it in her bones. The pressure slammed outward like an invisible wave, forcing the air from her lungs as she stumbled back another step, her hand gripping the edge of shattered display case to keep from falling. The glass beneath her fingers trembled, small fragments breaking loose and scattering across the floor. The shadows recoiled for a brief moment, retreating like something alive that had touched fire. Lucien stood unmoved at the center of it, his arms still raised, his body a barrier that nothing seemed able to pass. The faint crimson glow in his eyes had deepened now, no longer hidden, no longer restrained. It burned quietly, controlled, but undeniable. The figures at the doorway did not advance again immediately. They paused, their unnatural stillness returning, as if recalculating. The lead figure tilted its head once more, its gaze shifting between Lucien and the faint glow of the necklace behind him. "So it is true," it said, its layered voice carrying a strange satisfaction. "You would stand against us for her." Lucien did not lower his arm. "I would stand against anything for her," he replied. The certainty in his voice made Emily's chest tighten in a way she could not explain. The words did not feel like a threat. They felt like a vow. The lead figure's expression did not change, but the shadows along the floor began to stir again, slower this time, curling and twisting as if searching for another path. "You forget your place," it said. "You were not meant to interfere." Lucien's gaze sharpened. "And you were not meant to survive this long," he answered. The air grew heavier with each word, tension layering over tension until it felt like the room itself might collapse under it. Emily's heart pounded so hard it blurred her hearing. But beneath that panic, something else was happening. The necklace pulsed again, stronger than before. And this time the sensation did not just pass through her. It settled. It rooted itself deep inside her chest, spreading outward like something waking up after a long sleep. Her breathing slowed without her meaning for it to. The panic did not disappear, but it shifted, replaced by a strange clarity that did not feel like her own. The lead figure noticed immediately. Its gaze snapped toward her again, sharper now, almost eager. "She feels it," it said. "The bond is not just awake. It is returning." Lucien's stance tightened slightly, his body angling just enough to shield her more fully. "Do not speak of things you do not understand," he said. "On the contrary," the figure replied. "We understand it very well. We were there when it was broken." The words cut through the air with a different kind of weight, one that did not come from power alone, but from history. Emily's breath caught. Broken. The word echoed in her mind, stirring something deeper than the fleeting images she had seen before. This time, the vision came without warning. She was standing in that same vast hall again, but now it was not empty. Flames flickered along the walls, casting long shadows across polished stone. Voices echoed, louder this time, filled with urgency, with anger. And at the center of it all, she was there, not as Emily, as someone else. She could feel it, the weight of something resting on her head, the steady presence of someone standing beside her. A hand reaching for hers, then a sharp pull. Separation. Pain. The vision shattered violently, snapping her back into the present with a gasp. Emily staggered forward this time, her hand instinctively clutching the necklace at her throat. "What was that?" she whispered, her voice shaking. Lucien turned his head slightly, just enough to see her without taking his attention fully off the figures in front of him. "Memory," he said quietly. "Yours." Emily shook her head weakly. "That is not possible." But even as she said it, doubt crept in. It had felt too real, too detailed to be imagination. The lead figure stepped forward again, just one step, testing the space. This time, the shadows did not rush. They lingered at its feet, waiting. "You cannot protect her forever," it said. "The past does not stay buried." Lucien lowered his arm slowly, but not because he was retreating. The movement was controlled, deliberate, as if he had decided something. "No," he said, "but I can protect her long enough." Emily's pulse quickened again at the shift in his tone. It was no longer just defensive. It was decisive. Before she could ask what he meant, Lucien moved, not toward the figures, but toward her. In a single, fluid motion, he closed the distance between them, his presence surrounding her before she could react. His hand hovered just above her shoulder, close enough for her to feel the cold radiating from him. but he did not touch her yet. "Do you trust me?" he asked, his voice low, meant only for her. The question caught her off guard. Trust. In this moment, with everything happening, Emily hesitated, her mind racing, her heart still pounding. But beneath it all, that strange clarity remained. And for reasons she could not fully explain, she nodded. Lucien's gaze held hers for one brief second longer. Then he turned slightly, placing himself between her and the doorway once more. "Then do not let go," he said. The next moment, the air around them shifted violently, the space folding inward as if reality itself had been pulled too tight. The shadows surged forward again, faster this time, but Lucien did not meet them head on. Instead, he stepped back, pulling Emily with him as the world around them seemed to tear and bend. The pawn shop blurred, the broken glass, the shattered door, the figures in the doorway all distorting into streaks of dark and light. Emily gasped as the ground beneath her feet vanished for a fraction of a second, her grip tightening instinctively on the only thing that felt real. And then, just as suddenly, everything stopped. The world did not return the way Emily expected it to. There was no gradual settling, no soft transition back into something familiar. One moment, everything had been tearing apart, light and shadow twisting into something impossible, and the next there was silence. Heavy, absolute. Emily's knees nearly gave out as the ground solidified beneath her feet again, her hand instinctively gripping on Lucien's arm to steady herself. The surface under her shoes was no longer cracked tile or scattered glass. It was smooth, cold, stone. She drew in a sharp breath, her chest rising and falling too quickly as she tried to make sense of where she was. The air felt different here, thinner, colder, not just temperature but presence, like stepping into a place that did not belong to the same world she had just left behind. Slowly, she lifted her head. The space around them stretched far beyond anything she had ever seen. Tall pillars rose into darkness above, their surfaces carved with patterns that seemed to shift the longer she looked at them. Faint light flickered along the walls, not from bulbs or lamps, but from torches set in iron brackets, their flames steady and unnatural. The shadows they cast did not move the way shadows should. They lingered. They watched. Emily's breath caught as recognition hit her, not from memories she understood, but from something deeper. This was the place she had seen, in the flashes, in the moments that did not belong to her. "Where are we?" she whispered, her voice echoing faintly in the vast space. Lucien did not pull his arm away from her grip. If anything, he adjusted slightly, allowing her to hold on as long as she needed. "Home," he said. The words settled over her, heavy and final. Emily shook her head immediately, panic rising again as reality refused to align with anything she knew. "No," she said, her voice unsteady. "No, this is not my home. I have never been here." Lucien turned his head slightly, his gaze resting on her with a quiet intensity that felt almost too personal now. "You have," he replied, "just not as Emily Carter." The words sent a sharp chill through her. Her fingers tightened unconsciously around his sleeve. "Stop saying that," she whispered. "You keep talking like I am someone else, like I am supposed to remember things that are not mine." Lucien studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable, but there was no cold distance in it now. Only something quieter, something patient. "Because they are yours," he said. Emily's chest tightened. "Then why do I not remember?" she asked, her voice breaking slightly despite her effort to stay steady. Lucien's gaze shifted briefly, not away from her, but deeper, as if looking through layers of time she could not see. "Because you were meant to forget," he said. "It was the only way to keep you alive." The words lingered between them, heavier than anything he had said before. Emily opened her mouth to respond, but the necklace at her throat pulsed again, stronger this time, the warmth spreading outward like a slow wave. Her breath caught as the world around her seemed to tilt slightly. This time, the vision did not come as a flicker. It came as a presence. She was standing in the same hall again, but it was no longer empty. Voices filled the space, distant but clear, echoing against the stone. Figures moved along the edges of her vision, their forms blurred, their attention fixed on something ahead. On someone. On her. She could feel it. The weight resting on her head again. The steady pressure of something shaped like a crown. A voice beside her, low and familiar, speaking words she could not fully understand, but somehow felt her chest. Then a different voice. Sharper. Filled with anger. Accusation. The vision fractured, splintering apart into fragments of sound and light before snapping back into the present. Emily staggered slightly, her grip on Lucien tightening. I saw it again, she whispered, her voice unsteady. That place. Those people. They were looking at me. Lucien's expression did not change, but something in his posture shifted, as if he had been waiting for this moment. Because they always did, he said quietly. Emily looked up at him, confusion and fear colliding in her gaze. Why? She asked. Lucien did not answer immediately. Instead, he turned his head slightly, his attention shifting beyond her, toward the far end of the hall. Emily followed his gaze. At first, she saw nothing. Just darkness stretching between the pillars. Then, slowly, movement. Figures emerging from the shadows, their presence quiet but unmistakable. They moved with the same unnatural grace she had seen before, their steps silent against the stone floor. Her breath caught again, panic flaring instantly. No, she whispered. They followed us. Lucien stepped slightly forward, placing himself between her and the approaching figures without hesitation. Of course they did, he said calmly. Emily's chest tightened. You said we would be safe here. Lucien's gaze remained fixed on the figures ahead, his expression turning colder, sharper. We are, he replied. The certainty in his voice did not match the situation unfolding in front of her. The figures drew closer, their forms becoming clearer in the torchlight. Not the same ones from before. These were different, more controlled, more composed. One of them stepped ahead of the others, stopping several feet away, its posture straight, its gaze fixed not on Lucien, but on Emily. The silence stretched for a long moment before it spoke. Your Majesty, it said. The words froze the air around her more completely than anything else had. Emily's heart skipped. Do not, she said immediately, shaking her head, her voice sharp with denial. Do not call me that. The figure did not react. The court has been waiting, it continued calmly. Emily's breath came faster, her chest tightening as she took a step back, instinctively moving closer to Lucien again. I am not your queen, she said, her voice unsteady but firm. You have the wrong person. Lucien did not move. His presence remained steady, grounded, unshaken. No, he said quietly, his voice carrying through the hall with quiet authority. They do not. Emily turned her head toward him, her eyes wide, searching for something that would make sense of any of this. What she found instead was something far more terrifying. Certainty, not doubt. Word Your Majesty did not fade when the figure spoke it. It lingered, echoing through the vast hall, settling into the stone, into the air, into Emily's chest like something that refused to be denied. She shook her head again, more forcefully this time, her hand rising instinctively to the necklace at her throat as if she could tear it off and end all of this. Stop, she said, her voice sharper now, cutting through the silence. I told you, I'm not your queen. The figure did not move. It did not argue. It simply watched her, its expression calm, patient, as if it had seen this reaction before. You may not remember, it said, its tone even, almost respectful. But your blood does not forget. Emily's stomach twisted. The same words again. The same certainty that felt like a trap closing around her. She took another step back, her shoulder brushing against Lucien's arm, grounding herself against the rising panic. Say it again, she muttered under her breath, her voice tight with frustration. Say it one more time, and maybe it will start to sound real. Lucien did not respond to her tone. His gaze remained fixed on the figure ahead, but his presence beside her shifted slightly, steady, unmoving. Protective. You will address her properly, he said, his voice low but carrying unmistakable authority. The figure inclined its head just slightly, acknowledging him, but its attention never left Emily. "As you wish," it said, but the truth remains unchanged. Emily's breath came faster, her thoughts racing in circles she could not escape. Queen, blood, memory. None of it made sense. None of it could be real. And yet the necklace pulsed again, stronger this time, the heat spreading across her skin in a steady rhythm that did not belong to her heartbeat. The sensation climbed higher, pressing against her throat, her chest, her mind. Her vision flickered. This time, she did not fight it. She could not. The hall around her shifted, the shadows stretching longer, the torchlight burning brighter. The figures in front of her blurred, replaced by others. More of them, lined along the edges of the room, their heads bowed, their eyes lifted only when she moved. She could feel it again, their attention, their expectation, their fear. And at the center of it all, she stood. Not as Emily. Taller, straighter, stronger. A weight resting on her head, heavy but familiar. A crown. The realization struck before she could stop it. Her breath caught, and the vision cracked, splintering into fragments before snapping back into the present. Emily staggered slightly, her hand gripping the necklace now, her fingers pressing into the warm metal as if it could anchor her. "No," she whispered, shaking her head, her voice breaking despite her effort to hold it together. "That is not me." The figure took a single step forward, slow and deliberate, stopping just short of the invisible line that Lucien seemed to hold between them. "It is," it said quietly, "and the court will not remain divided any longer." The words shifted the tension in the room instantly. Emily's eyes flicked between the figure and Lucien, confusion tightening into something sharper. "Divided," she repeated, her voice low. "What does that mean?" The figure did not answer her. Instead, its gaze shifted slightly toward Lucien, something colder settling into its expression. "There are those who believe she should not return," it said, "that the throne should remain empty." Emily's breath caught. The implication hit her before she could fully process it. This was not just about her. This was about power, control, something much bigger than anything she had been dragged into before. Lucien's posture did not change, but the air around him seemed to sharpen, the faint crimson in his eyes deepening just slightly. "And there are those who would tear this world apart to prevent it," he replied. The figure did not deny it. "Balance was restored when she fell," it said. "Bringing her back threatens everything." Emily's chest tightened. "Fell." The word echoed louder than anything else. Not died. Fell. As if it had been something more. Something deliberate. Her fingers tightened around the necklace again, the warmth now almost overwhelming. "What happened to her?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The figure's gaze returned to her, steady and unreadable. "She chose," it said, "and the world paid the price." The answer sent a cold wave through her, deeper than fear. Something heavier. Regret. The feeling did not belong to her. And yet it did. Lucien stepped forward slightly then, just enough to reclaim the space between them, his voice cutting through the tension. "You will not speak of that here," he said. The authority in his tone left no room for argument. The figure inclined its head again, but this time there was something else beneath emotion. Restraint. "Then the decision will have to come from her," it said, its voice softer now, but no less certain. Emily's heart skipped. "What decision?" she asked, her voice tightening. The figure held her gaze, unwavering. "Whether you will return to what you were," it said, "or remain what you have become." The words settled into the space between them, heavier than anything before. Emily felt the weight of it instantly, pressing down on her chest, her thoughts, her very breath. Return, or remain. She shook her head slightly, her voice barely holding together. "I do not understand." Lucien turned his head toward her then, his expression softer than she had seen it before, but no less intense. "You will," he said quietly. The certainty in his voice was not comforting. It was inevitable. And for the first time since this began, Emily realized that whatever choice they were talking about, it was not something she would be able to avoid. The word choice did not leave Emily's mind. It echoed there, repeating over and over as if something inside her refused to let it go. Return or remain. The weight of it pressed against her chest until it became difficult to breathe. She looked between the figure and Lucien, her thoughts racing, her pulse unsteady. "I never chose any of this," she said, her voice trembling despite the effort to steady it. "You're talking about my life like it is something that already happened, like I already made a decision. I did not." The figure regarded her in silence for a moment, its expression unreadable. "Not as you are now," it said, "but you did." The certainty in its voice made something twist deep inside her. Emily shook her head again, more forcefully this time. "Then explain it," she demanded. "Explain what I supposedly did that caused all of this." The tension in the hall sharpened instantly. The torches flickered slightly, their flames bending in a direction that did not follow any natural draft. The figure did not answer her right away. Instead, its gaze shifted briefly toward Lucien, as if measuring something unspoken between them. Lucien's posture remained steady, but there was a subtle shift in the set of his shoulders, a quiet warning that did not need words. "You will not force this," he said, his voice low and controlled. The figure inclined its head slightly, but there was resistance in the motion now. "The truth cannot be hidden forever," it replied. "She deserves to know what she was." Emily's breath caught at the word was. Not is. Was. The distinction hit harder than she expected. "What I was," she repeated softly, her voice losing some of its edge. "And what does that mean for what I am now?" Neither of them answered immediately. The silence stretched, heavy and deliberate, until it felt like the entire hall was waiting for something to break. Lucien turned toward her then, his gaze steady, his voice quieter than before, but no less firm. "It means you have a choice," he said. Emily's chest tightened again. "You keep saying that," she whispered, "but it does not feel like a choice." Lucien's expression softened, just slightly, but enough for her to notice. "That is because you do not yet understand what you are choosing between," he said. The figure stepped forward again, just one step, but this time the movement carried more weight, more intention. "Then allow her to understand," it said. Lucien's eyes darkened, the faint crimson flicker returning beneath the surface. "You would tell her your version of it," he replied, "and leave out the rest." "We would tell her the truth," the figure countered. The air tightened again, tension coiling between them like something ready to snap. Emily's heart pounded harder as she looked from one to the other, the realization settling deeper with every second. They were not just disagreeing. They were opposing each other, and she was standing in the middle of it. "Enough," she said suddenly, her voice sharper than before, cutting through the tension. Both of them went still. Emily drew in a shaky breath, forcing herself to stay upright, to stay present. "I'm not something you can argue over like property," she continued, her voice steadier now, even as her hands trembled slightly at her sides. "If there is a truth, then I want to hear it. All of it." The figure's gaze remained fixed on her, but there was something different in it now. Approval. "Then listen," it said. Lucien stepped forward instantly, his presence shifting in a way that made the air around him feel heavier. "No," he said, his voice cutting through the hall with quiet authority. "Not like this." Emily turned toward him, frustration flashing through her fear. "Then how?" she demanded. "Because I'm tired of being the only person here who does not know what is happening." Lucien held her gaze for a long moment, something unreadable passing through his expression. Then, slowly he exhaled. "You chose to end the war," he said. The words landed softly, but their impact was immediate. Emily's breath caught. "What war?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucien's gaze did not waver. "The one that would have destroyed both worlds," he replied. Emily's mind struggled to keep up, the scale of what he was saying too large, too distant to fully grasp. "And how did I end it?" she asked. This time, it was the figure who answered. "You broke the bond," it said. The word struck harder than anything else had. Emily's hand rose instinctively to the necklace at her throat, her fingers brushing against the warm metal. "What bond?" she whispered. Lucien's jaw tightened slightly, his eyes darkening. Ours, he said. The single word shattered whatever fragile sense of stability she had left. Emily stared at him, her chest tightening, her thoughts scattering in every direction at once. That is not possible, she said immediately, shaking her head. I have never even met you before. The pain that flickered across Lucien's expression lasted only a second, but it was enough to change something in the air between them. You did, he said quietly, and you chose to leave. The words settled into her, heavy and final. Emily felt her breath catch again, but this time it was not just fear. It was something else, something deeper, something that did not belong to her and yet felt like it did. Loss. The necklace pulsed once more, stronger than before, the warmth spreading through her chest like a slow, steady fire. And for a brief, terrifying moment, Emily was no longer certain which part of her was real. The word leave did not sound like a simple decision anymore. It echoed differently in Emily's mind, heavier, sharper, like something that had cost more than she could understand. She stared at Lucien, her breath unsteady, her fingers still resting against the necklace, as if it were the only thing anchoring her to the present. I would not do that, she said, her voice quiet but firm, as if repeating it could make it true. I would not just walk away from something like that. Not from a war. Not from, she hesitated, her gaze flickering briefly to his eyes. From you. The silence that followed was not empty. It was filled with something fragile, something that had been buried for a very long time. Lucien did not look away from her. You did not walk away, he said finally, his voice lower now, carrying a weight that felt almost personal. You ended it. Emily's chest tightened again. By breaking the bond, she repeated, the words still foreign on her tongue. Why would I do that? This time, neither of them answered immediately. The figure standing across from them remained still, but its presence felt sharper now, as if it had been waiting for this exact question. Lucien's jaw tightened slightly, his gaze shifting away from her for the first time since he had spoken. That alone told her something was wrong, because it was the only way, the figure said before Lucien could respond. Emily's eyes snapped toward it. The only way to do what? She demanded. The figure stepped forward one more time, stopping just short of the invisible boundary that still seemed to exist between them. To stop him, it said. The words landed like a sudden drop in temperature. Emily's heart skipped. Stop him, she repeated slowly, her gaze flicking back to Lucien. What does that mean? Lucien did not answer right away. The silence stretched, tension building in a different way now, no longer just external, but something deeper, something tied directly to him. Tell her, the figure said, its voice steady, pressing. Or I will. Lucien's gaze darkened, the faint crimson returning beneath the surface, sharper this time. You will not twist what happened to serve your purpose, he said. It is not a twist, the figure replied. It is history. Emily felt her pulse quicken again, her chest tightening as the space between them grew heavier. Enough, she said, her voice cutting through the exchange, sharper than before. Both of them went still again. If this is about me, then I am not standing here while you argue around me like I am not part of it, she continued, her voice steadier now, despite the storm building inside her. What did I do? And what did he do? The hall seemed to hold its breath. Lucien turned back toward her slowly, his expression no longer unreadable. There was something else there now, something harder, something that looked dangerously close to regret. I lost control, he said. The words were simple, too simple for the weight they carried. Emily blinked, confusion tightening her brow. Lost control of what? Lucien did not look away this time. Of the war, he said, of the power that came with it. The figure did not interrupt. It did not need to. The shift in the air was enough to tell Emily that what he was saying mattered more than anything before. The war was not just between worlds. Lucien continued, his voice steady but lower now, as if each word was chosen carefully. It became something else, something that would have consumed everything. Emily's breath caught. And me? She asked softly. Where was I in all of that? Lucien's gaze softened just slightly, but the weight behind it did not lessen. You were the only one who could reach me, he said. The words settled into her, like something both impossible and undeniable. The necklace pulsed again, slower this time, deeper, as if responding to something beyond her understanding. "And I broke the bond," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucian nodded once. "You severed it," he said. "Completely." Emily's hand tightened around the necklace, her fingers pressing into the metal as if trying to feel something solid beneath everything else. "And that stopped the war," she said. "It saved everything," the figure added quietly. Emily closed her eyes for a brief moment, her mind racing, trying to hold on to something real, something that belonged to her life before all of this. But every time she reached for it, something else pushed forward. The hall, the crown, the feeling of standing beside him, and then the absence, the emptiness that followed. She opened her eyes again, her gaze returning to Lucian. "Then why do I feel like something was lost?" she asked. Lucian's expression did not change, but something in his eyes shifted, something deeper, something that did not belong to the present moment. "Because it was," he said. The answer was quiet, final. Emily's chest tightened again, her breath catching as that unfamiliar weight settled deeper inside her. Loss. Not imagined. Not borrowed. Real. The necklace pulsed. Once more, and this time the vision came without warning, without resistance. She stood in that hall again, but now it was breaking apart. Cracks running through the stone. Voices shouting. A force tearing through the space between her and the man standing before her. His hand reaching for hers. Her own pulling away. Not in fear. In decision. The image shattered, snapping her back into the present with a sharp inhale. Emily staggered slightly, her grip tightening on the necklace as her heart pounded uncontrollably. "I did that," she whispered, her voice barely holding together. Lucian did not deny it. "Yes," he said. The truth settled in her fully this time, no longer something distant or abstract. It was hers. And for the first time since this began, Emily realized something far more dangerous than anything that had come before. If she had once been capable of making a choice like that, then whatever she was becoming again might not be someone she could trust. The realization did not fade after it settled in Emily's chest. It stayed there, heavy and unmovable, like a truth that had been waiting for her long before she ever knew it existed. She stood still for a long moment, her fingers still curled around the necklace, her breathing uneven but slowly stabilizing as something inside her began to shift. The panic was still there, but it was no longer in control. Something else was rising to meet it, something steadier. "If I made that choice once," she said quietly, her voice no longer shaking the way it had before, "then there must have been a reason." Lucian did not respond immediately, but the faint tension in his shoulders eased just slightly, as if those words had changed something. "There was," he said. Emily lifted her gaze to meet his fully now, no longer avoiding it. "Then tell me why it feels like I lost more than I saved," she asked. The question lingered between them, heavier than anything she had said before. Lucian held her gaze, and for the first time since she had met him, there was no distance left in his expression. No cold restraint. Only truth. "Because you did," he said. The answer did not come with explanation. It did not soften itself. It simply existed. Emily felt her breath catch. But this time, she did not look away. She did not retreat. Instead, she stepped forward. Just one step, closing the distance between them in a way that felt deliberate. "Then why bring me back?" she asked. "Why not leave me as I was?" Lucian's gaze flickered, something deeper moving behind it, something that had been held back for far too long. "Because you were never meant to stay gone," he said. Emily's chest tightened. "That is not an answer," she replied softly. The figure standing across from them shifted slightly, but did not interrupt. It watched, silent now, as if this moment did not belong to it. Lucian exhaled slowly, his voice lowering further. "Because the world did not heal the way you hoped it would," he said. The words struck differently this time. Not as a revelation, but as confirmation. Emily's fingers loosened slightly around the necklace. "So it did not work?" she said. Lucian's gaze did not waver. "It worked," he replied, "but did not last." The weight of that settled into her, heavier than anything else. She looked down briefly, her thoughts shifting, connecting pieces that had not made sense before. A war that ended, a bond that was broken, a world that was saved, but only temporarily. And now it is happening again, she said quietly. Lucien did not answer with words. He did not need to. The silence was enough. Emily lifted her head again, her gaze moving past him for the first time toward the figures still standing in the distance. They had not moved closer. They had not retreated. They were waiting, watching, measuring, the same way they had been in the vision, the same way they had been before. "They are not just here for me," she said slowly. "They are here because something is starting again." "Yes," the figure answered this time, its voice calm but carrying a weight that felt older than the hall itself. Emily turned her head slightly, her eyes narrowing just a fraction. "And if I do nothing," she asked, "what happens?" The figure did not hesitate. "The balance will break," it said. "And this time, there may not be anything left to restore." The certainty in its voice did not feel like a threat. It felt like inevitability. Emily's chest tightened again, but she did not look away. She could not. Not anymore. Her gaze shifted back to Lucien, and for the first time since this began, she saw something she had not allowed herself to fully acknowledge before. He was not just part of this. He was tied to it, to her, in a way that went far beyond anything she understood. "And if I return," she asked, her voice quieter now, more measured. "If I become what I was," she hesitated, the words catching for just a second before she forced them out. "What happens to me?" Lucien did not answer right away. His silence stretched, heavier than any words he could have chosen. Emily felt her pulse quicken slightly at that alone. "You already know the answer," he said finally. The words landed softly, but they carried a weight that pressed directly against her chest. Emily's breath caught. She did know. Not in words, not in logic, but in feeling. The same feeling that had come with the vision. The same sense of finality, of cost. Her fingers tightened around the necklace again, but this time it did not feel like something foreign. It felt familiar, like something she had once worn not out of necessity, but by choice. "I lose this life," she said quietly. Lucien did not deny it. "Yes," he said. The answer settled into her, heavy and undeniable. Emily closed her eyes for a brief moment, her mind pulling back towards something simple. A small apartment, a hospital room, her mother's voice, ordinary things, real things. Then she opened them again, and the hall returned. The pillars, the shadows, the weight of something far older than any life she had known. She looked at Lucien once more, her gaze steady now in a way it had not been before. "And if I do not return?" she asked. Lucien's expression did not change, but something in his eyes darkened slightly. "Then you will remain safe," he said, "but the world will not." The simplicity of that answer left no room for comfort. Emily let out a slow breath, the sound quiet but deliberate. The choice was no longer abstract. It was real, immediate, and for the first time, she understood why it had been called a choice at all. Not because she wanted it, but because she was the only one who could make it. She lowered her hand slowly from the necklace, her fingers uncurling as she took a small step forward, away from the place. She had been standing, not toward the figure, not fully toward Lucien, but into the space between them, into the decision itself. The hall seemed to grow quieter as she did, the air tightening as if even the world was waiting. Emily drew in one more steady breath, her voice calm despite everything that still moved beneath the surface. "Then I need to know one more thing," she said. Her gaze did not leave Lucien's. "If I choose to return, will I still be me?" The question lingered, heavier than anything before it. And for the first time since this began, Lucien did not have an immediate answer. Lucien did not answer her question immediately, and that silence told Emily more than any words could have. It was not uncertainty that held him back. It was truth, the kind that could not be softened without breaking it entirely. Emily held his gaze, her chest rising and falling in a slow, controlled rhythm as she waited. Around them, the hall remained still, the distant figures unmoving, the shadows stretching quietly along the stone as if even they were listening. You will still be you, Lucien said finally, his voice low, measured, each word chosen with care. But you will also be everything you were before. The answer settled into her, not as comfort, but as weight. Emily's brow tightened slightly. That does not sound the same, she said. Lucien did not look away. It is not, he admitted. The honesty in that admission struck deeper than denial ever could have. Emily lowered her gaze for a moment, her fingers brushing lightly against the necklace again, not gripping it this time, but feeling it. The steady warmth, the quiet pulse. It no longer felt foreign. It felt familiar in a way that unsettled her more than anything else. So I do not lose myself, she said slowly, thinking through each word, but I become someone who has already made choices I do not remember. Yes, Lucien said. Emily exhaled softly, her shoulders rising and falling as she processed that. And if I do not agree with those choices, she asked. Lucien's expression shifted just slightly, something softer moving beneath the surface. Then you'll have to live with them, he said. The answer was not cruel. It was not cold. It was simply real. Emily nodded once, her gaze still lowered her. Thoughts moving through possibilities she had never imagined she would have to face. A life she knew, a life she understood, and another life, one filled with power, responsibility, and consequences she could barely grasp. She lifted her head again, her eyes moving briefly past Lucien toward the figures in the distance. They had not moved closer. They had not spoken again, but their presence remained constant and patient, like something that had all the time in the world. If I return, she said quietly, they will follow me. They already are, the figure answered from across the hall. Emily did not flinch this time. She simply nodded, as if she had expected that answer. Her gaze shifted back to Lucien. And you, she said, if I return, what happens to you? The question lingered differently than the others. More personal, more direct. Lucien held her gaze, and for a moment, the distance between them felt smaller than it had since this began. That depends on you, he said. Emily's chest tightened slightly. On me, she repeated. Lucien nodded once. The bond you broke, he said, his voice quieter now, was not just power. It was connection. It was trust. It was everything that tied us together. Emily felt the words settle into her slowly, each one carrying more weight than the last. And if I return, she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, does it come back? Lucien's gaze did not waver. It can, he said, but it will not be the same. The answer was honest, careful, and filled with something she could not fully name. Emily looked at him for a long moment, searching his face for something she had not yet seen. What she found was not certainty. It was not expectation. It was something far more complicated. Hope. The realization struck her quietly, but it did not leave. He was not just waiting for her decision because of the world. He was waiting because of what it meant for them. Emily drew in a slow breath, her thoughts shifting again, but this time they did not spiral. They settled. She thought of the life she had known, the small apartment, the quiet routines, the hospital room, her mother's hand in hers. Then she thought of the visions, the hall, the crown, the weight of something larger than herself, the feeling of standing beside someone who looked at her like she mattered in a way that went beyond anything she understood. Her fingers tightened slightly against the necklace, not out of fear this time, but out of recognition. This was not just something happening to her. This was something she had been part of before, something she had chosen once already. She closed her eyes briefly, her breath steady, her mind no longer resisting what it could not change. When she opened them again, there was something different in her gaze. Not certainty, not yet, but clarity. She stepped forward again, this time more deliberately, her movement drawing the attention of both Lucien and the figure across the hall. The air shifted slightly, as if the space itself recognized the change. Emily stopped just ahead of where she had been before, her posture straighter, her voice calm when she spoke. If I choose to return, she said, her gaze fixed on Lucien, then I do it knowing what it costs. Lucien did not interrupt. He did not move. He simply listened. Emily's chest rose with one more steady breath. But I need one promise, she continued. The words hung there, waiting. Lucien's gaze sharpened just slightly. Name it, he said. Emily held his eyes, her voice quiet but unwavering. That whatever I become, she said, you will not let me lose myself completely. The request settled into the space between them, heavier than anything before it. Lucien's expression did not change immediately, but something in his eyes shifted, something deeper than anything she had seen so far. I failed to protect you once, he said quietly. I will not fail again. The words were not dramatic. They were not loud, but they carried the weight of something far older than either of them could fully escape. Emily nodded once, accepting that answer for what it was. Not a guarantee, but a vow. The necklace pulsed again, stronger now, the warmth spreading across her skin, through her chest, through her entire being. The hall seemed to darken slightly, the torches flickering as if reacting to the shift. Emily did not look away this time. She did not step back. She simply stood there, at the edge of a decision that would change everything. And for the first time since this began, she was no longer afraid of it. The moment did not arrive with thunder or fire. It arrived in silence. Emily stood at the center of the vast hall, the weight of every choice she had ever made and every life she had ever lived pressing quietly against her chest. The necklace pulsed once, then again, slower now, deeper, as if it were no longer reacting to her, but aligning with her. She closed her eyes, not in fear, but in acceptance. When she spoke, her voice was calm. I choose to return. The words did not echo loudly, but the effect was immediate. The air shifted. The torches along the walls flared brighter for a single heartbeat, their flames bending inward toward her, as if drawn by something unseen. The ground beneath her feet seemed to steady, the tension in the hall settling into something different. Not chaos, not fear, order. Emily inhaled slowly as the warmth from the necklace spread fully through her chest, her shoulders, her mind. It was not overwhelming this time. It was familiar. Memories did not crash into her all at once. They unfolded, layer by layer. The hall around her sharpened, no longer strange or distant, but known. The figures in the distance were no longer shadows. They were faces, names, loyalties. The crown she had seen in fragments before now rested fully within her awareness, not as an object, but as a responsibility. Emily's eyes opened, but the way she looked at the world had changed. She was still Emily. She could still feel it, the memory of her mother's voice, the small apartment, the quiet life she had lived. But behind it now was something else, something older, stronger, unshaken. She lifted her chin slightly, her posture no longer uncertain. The hall responded. The figures that had been standing at a distance lowered their heads, not in fear, but in recognition. The shift was undeniable. The queen had returned. Lucien did not move immediately. He watched her, his gaze steady, searching, as if measuring what remained and what had changed. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Emily took a step forward, not as someone lost, not as someone uncertain, but as someone who understood the weight of where she stood. The war will not begin again, she said. Her voice carried through the hall, calm and absolute. The figure across from her straightened slightly, its expression no longer questioning, but attentive. That is not a decision you can make alone, it said. Emily's gaze shifted to it, steady and unyielding. It is if I refuse to let it happen, she replied. The certainty in her tone did not come from defiance. It came from knowing. The hall seemed to hold its breath. The figure studied her for a long moment, then slowly inclined its head. Not submission, not yet, but acknowledgement. Then the balance will depend on you once more, it said. Emily did not look away. It always did, she answered. The silence that followed was different now. It was no longer filled with tension. It was filled with understanding. The figures stepped back, one by one, retreating into the shadows they had come from, not defeated, but accepting that something had shifted beyond their control. When they were gone, the hall felt larger, quieter, and for the first time since this began, still, Emily exhaled slowly, the weight of what she had chosen settling fully into her. It was not light. It was not easy, but it was hers. She turned her head slightly, her gaze returning to Lucien. He had not moved. He had not spoken, but something in his eyes had changed. Not hope, not relief, something deeper. Recognition. Emily stepped closer to him, closing the distance that had once felt impossible. For a brief moment, neither of them spoke. Then she reached out, her hand lifting, not hesitating this time, not uncertain. When her fingers touched his, the connection was immediate, not overwhelming, not consuming, balanced, steady, real. Lucien's breath stilled for a fraction of a second, his gaze locking with hers. "You came back," he said quietly. Emily held his gaze, her expression calm, but no less powerful. "I did not come back," she replied softly. "I chose to stay." The words settled between them, heavier than any vow. Lucien's hand closed around hers, not pulling, not claiming, but holding. Equal. For the first time in a very long time, the silence between them was not empty. It was complete. The hall remained still around them, the shadows no longer watching, the weight of the past no longer pressing. Outside, the world waited. Uncertain, unstable, but no longer without balance. Emily stood there, no longer divided between two lives, but whole within both. A queen who remembered what it meant to be human. A human who understood what it meant to hold power. And this time, she would not choose between them. She would protect both, even if it cost everything. Because now she knew the truth she had forgotten before. Even the coldest kings kneel for kindness.